another nominee to one of the vacancies, then the slot as listed are eligible to and agreeable to appointment or reappointment to their authority, board, or commission.
My only question on that, and I may not be interpreting it correctly, but I see that Josh Grimes is on the commercial loan committee. Is he still a resident of the city?
He is not, but he's filling a slot for a business owner. He's the president of a business that owns property and operates a commercial enterprise in the city.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I move reappointment and appointment of those on the list.
I'll second.
Motion floor in a second. Any questions or comments? I would just add quickly before we go ahead and vote that there are several vacant slots, and I don't know about the rest of you, but for as long as I've served, I hear people say, well, they just appoint the same people all the time. This is open to anyone in the public that lives in the city, most of them anyways, that you have to live in the city. Reach out to a council member, reach out to city staff. We do want people to take part in helping to govern the city, and this is a good way to get involved. It's not quite as public, you don't get yelled at quite as much as if you're on council. So for those of you who get to see this out there, please step up and help us out. With that, call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzordi.
Yes.
Councilmember Mincer.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just a moment, and I'll just ask the city manager this, is this something that we would customarily post in the local newspapers, although I don't know how many people read them, for the opportunity for people to serve, or maybe a press release?
These were actually advertised between Christmas and New Year's for that purpose. But now we will additionally make sure they stay on the city's website to draw people's attention to these opportunities, and make sure that they are advertised as well on our Facebook page.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. 5C, appointment of members of council to authorities, boards, and commissions.
The next two pages are the liaison and subcommittee, and sometimes the actual authority, board, or commission appointments of members of council. And on those two worksheets, you can see column 1 is the name of the authority, board, or commission. And to your far right is the individual currently holding that position. Now is the speak now or forever hold your peace moment on if you'd like to trade particular positions, give up one and offer it to other members of council for the things that are basically on the first page. The second page will address if no one has any changes that they'd like to propose.
Sorry, I keep blowing off steam here. I did not see my name listed as the Historic Advisory Committee.
You are, it is 1, 2, 3, the fourth item down.
As long as, yeah, all right, thank you. I just missed it, I guess.
Anyone else have any input, any thoughts? Okay, so do we have a motion? I'm not hearing you, you're muted. Do you want to speak, Bill? Because I can't hear you. All right.
All right. Your Honor, before you make a motion, we could address the vacancies that there are and then just do everything as one motion if you would so like.
Sure. That's fine.
May I ask on the second page, Public Works, is that streets, sewer, water, real public works thing, or because it's linked in with shade trees?
So that's the very last item on the list. Since that's your question, we'll address that first. Under the local city code, the Shade Tree Commission is the entity that enforces when private trees within the right-of-way need to be trimmed, and enforces that property owners do actually trim those trees. So we don't have an official established Shade Tree Commission. So under the third class code, council could also appoint a department to handle that, but council has not appointed a department nor a Shade Tree Commission. So this became apparent this year in conversations between the Director of Public Works and I. And he is also interested in starting a Public Works subcommittee that eventually would include members of the public. So this would be a good way to kind of forge into what eventually could be a more productive committee. But right now, I think it may be prudent to have one member of council appointed to the subcommittee for Public Works and Shade Trees, and then direct 2 members of the Recreation and Parks Committee to be selected by that committee to serve on the other 2 seats.
Thank you for the explanation. I would step up and serve on that, seeing how what my background is in almost everything that we work on or do has been my life's work. So I think I could offer something towards that committee if council and the mayor so sees as the liaison.
Any other positions that what people want to address here?
I did notice, although it is not required, that there is the liaison to the Board of Health and the liaison to the Rec and Parks Board have not been appointed. They are not required under the city code, but council, if it so chooses, could appoint a liaison from council to each of those boards.
If the council chooses, I'd be willing to sit on Recreation and Parks Board as a council liaison.
And I would be happy to serve on the Board of Health.
And then the next subcommittee this year begins the bargaining with the Lock Haven Police Officers Association. Excuse me, 3 members of council are traditionally appointed to the bargaining agreement committees by default. The mayor, Joel Long, holds one of those 3 positions. And so there are 2 other bargaining agreement subcommittee vacancies open for members of council to consider.
I'd be willing to step up to sit on that.
So would I.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the help. It's a lot of fun. I've done it a few times.
The last item, Your Honor, is one of the recommendations from the EIP that the city did was to create a police relations subcommittee, which is made up of the mayor, the city manager, the chief of police, 1 patrol officer, and 1 administrating officer, either a lieutenant, detective, or sergeant, and 1 member of council. So that subcommittee for police relations does have 1 position open for a council member who would be interested in serving on that committee as well.
I'd be willing to do that with the work that we're doing with the diversity committee. If nobody else wants it.
I don't see anyone beating the door down.
All right.
So looks like it's yours.
We'll now ask the Lock Haven Police Officers Association to appoint 1 lieutenant, detective, or sergeant, and also 1 patrol officer to that committee. And after they complete that task, then the other members of the committee will be notified of the complete committee.
Okay.
I've written down all the nominations that people have said, Your Honor.
Mhm.
And so if there are no others, then
Well, thank you for keeping me on task with that, because I didn't have the full list in front of me when I first asked, so good that we went down and took care of those other things. Appreciate it. So, looks like we filled in what we needed to fill in. Do we have a motion to approve the list of appointments?
I will move approval. Second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion about this?
Yeah, after I've the negotiating for the police contract, I have to admit I've been on that since I got on council, and I appreciate you folks stepping up. And really, I know the mayor was being a little facetious, but I really did enjoy it. I thought it gave me a whole new perspective, frankly, on both the police, and I served on the negotiating team for the AFSCME group as well. So you will enjoy it. You really will. You'll get a new insight.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's correct. I was having a little fun, but you do get a perspective that you don't get otherwise being in those meetings. So anyway, now we have the list. We had the motion and the second, correct? And any other comments or questions on that? Call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Mincer.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Any other matters for the organization?
I had none, Your Honor.
Okay. Correspondence 6A, the 2019 annual audit.
So the city receives two forms of the annual audit. One is a little more difficult for the typical person to read and comprehend, but will be available on the city's website. And that is the one from Baker Tilly. That's then transferred into the DCED chart of accounts and submitted to DCED. That's the one that appears this evening. And for members of council and the public, this is available from the DCED website. This and previous years for not only our municipality, but all municipalities, you can go online and find this. Beginning page 11 starts the revenues by type. Page 15 is expenditures by type. And page 21 details the $3.2 million in capital improvements by type. And this is, of course, for the fiscal year 2018. The audit for the year 2019 will begin this spring and then be completed by the end of the year for 2020. I would ask that council make a motion to adopt the audit, however.
The point of interest, the top of that says it's the audit for 2019.
Correct.
So it was for you said 18, but it is for 19?
I'm misstating. That is the 2019 fiscal year audit.
Okay, thanks. I move that we accept the audit report.
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second. Any further questions on the audit? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Mincer.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 6B, the 2021 DCED tax info.
Every year, the city submits, after council passes the resolution or the ordinance to set the city's millage rate. The city submits to DCED its tax rate information. I provide this every year to council because it does provide the blended rate. As everyone knows in the city, we tax land separate from the building and improvements. They have two different tax rates. And so people are always curious what the kind of apples to apples is for the city's millage rate compared to everyone else who has a single rate millage. So this year, our blended rate is 9.171 mils. And that's really just for council information that doesn't require any action.
Okay. 6C, Piper Airport Annual Inspection Report.
This is also for council's information. This has also been provided to the airport subcommittee of council, which includes council members Mazzorati and Stevenson. And this was done December of this year. And if anyone has any questions, the Director of Public Works is here. And so he could probably address some of those questions better than I can.
I do have a couple questions, Tony, if you can hear me.
Gotcha, Steve.
The board for the aircraft reporting, I saw that our last report was in November 18th, and they're asking us to send another letter about the aircraft reporting. And we
Oh, on
just
the
sent that in
NOTAM.
November.
Yeah.
Say again?
Yeah, on the NOTAM reporting.
Yes, we just did it on the 18th, and now on the 14th, they're asking us to do it again. Is that a monthly, semi-annual, or a yearly report that we send in, or were we a year behind?
I'm pretty sure that's an annual report. I'll get with Doug here first thing in the morning to see what needs to be sent in for 2021.
Yeah, because that just went in with his report. And also, you know, and I'm looking at the photos that you sent to Barb and I, and sooner or later, didn't we just cut some trees down in the glide path for the guy that wanted to fly around and then charged us to fly around a second time, that he had a couple scary trees or something that we took down?
We do. We top the trees that are currently in the obstruction transitional surface, but it's not removal. It's always topping. So every year we always play that game with some trees. This year might not be hitting the inspection, but next year might get hit.
Okay, because some of them are like 1,000 and some feet. How many feet do we have from the end of the runway to Wright Street, that grassy area?
Oh, offhand, I don't.
I just wondered, because I
Yeah.
couldn't remember what it was either, but I know it's hundreds of feet. And then in the glide path, we have one, you know, it seems we top or take off some of these trees. It seems they set up and then site in the next block and the next block. How many blocks up do we have our easement for trees? You know, that we paid for to all the homeowners in the glide path and to the left and the right?
It's not really a block. We have a map in City Hall that shows the easement height. It kind of goes in ovals around the airport. So, you know, there is a physical map that identifies that. Sometimes too, there's a tree blocking a tree. So in the easement, when they're doing the assessment, they may see a tree that once we cut it down, it actually produces vision sight so that you can see the tree behind it. So sometimes we just are fighting a never-ending battle, especially when it comes to topping. But it's very helpful to know what ones there are, because we do have the staff now that quite often can identify and address that in-house rather than having to hire that out, and as we used to have to do.
And I'm looking at runway 27R compared to the 9L. And we have trees out there that are at a 10-to-1 slope on 27R, but they want us to remove the trees that are less of a slope, like 5-to-1 and 4-to-1 on the other end of the runway. So it just doesn't seem, you know, do we have a letter? Because I read something in there that had that we said we'd be working on them, but we're not going to take them all down at one time, or we asked for a waiver or something that says, hey, we'll get to them as soon as we can get to them. Did we ask for that before? it alludes to that in the bottom of that report.
I think that has to do primarily with really one particular parcel of land that we were unable to gain the easement for right off the bat. And so
Yeah.
we have gotten a waiver on that particular parcel to remove those trees, but it isn't for all the trees in the easement area. And again, you know, it really does depend where those ovals fall. They aren't perfectly equal all the way around. So sometimes it's thicker on one side, thinner on one side, but that map is available. And I believe that we have it digitally, that it could be emailed to you by John, so that you could take a look at that and see where some of those circles are, or ovals, and what the height is. Because there are places that you couldn't have a one-story building on one side of the airport, but on the other side of the airport you can. But it has to do with how pilots approach too. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know this is safety preemptive on our part and the FAA's part, but we haven't had any complaints of pilots brushing the tops of the trees at all because of the glide path. Have we? Mostly they take off going over the city and come in from the field side. And, you know, here we are still going around cutting people's tops of their trees down, which I'm all for safety, but it just seems like they named an awful lot of trees all of a sudden. Like you say, one tree was in front of another tree, and it's a never ending thing here.
well, to the BOA, it isn't a complaint-based system. It's
Yeah.
based on, you know, tangible figures that they put to paper that they come and assess every year whether or not we've exceeded that. So
So if we
but we can
don't
talk
happen to
about it
get,
in the committee.
if we don't happen to get to some of the far ones or clear to the right or to the left that are 1,300 feet away, including the end of the runway, they're not going to come and say, shut the airport down, right?
I can't speak for the Bureau of Aviation.
Safe answer. Okay. Guess those were my concerns and questions. I think it's probably time that we should, now that it's the first of the year, and even on Zoom, we did our training on Zoom, and somewhere in between here, we need to have a committee meeting and talk over some of these things in committee instead of at council, because there are a lot of questions and unknowns, and you don't know what to really ask, but you want to do the right thing. So if we can get them when we can someday here in the near future, to start to have our meetings again, or not again, but to fire them up, you know, and get them going.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else, Steve?
No, thank you very much.
Yep. Anything else on the Piper inspection report? Tony, thank you. 6D, Lock Haven University annual donation.
The annual donation from Lock Haven University equals $1 for each enrolled student in the fall semester. And this year that is $2,941 donation from Lock Haven University. And in 2020, that was $2,913. So it is slightly more than the 2020 receipt. This is actually for 2021.
They increased enrollment even in a pandemic.
Yep.
That's good. Anything else for correspondence?
I had nothing, Your Honor.
Unfinished business, 7A, consideration of the award of the lease agreements for Rosecrans property to BAI.
I'll turn this over to the Director of Public Works, who handled the bidding process for this.
All right, so in November, we got approval to put an RFP out for the land lease at Old Reservoir. These were put out. We received 2 proposals, one from Strack Farms, a current lessee, and BA Consultants. The proposers were to include a written statement for the use of the land, to explain exactly what was going to be done with the land, and attached is that for your review. The recommendation to council is for us to work with the city solicitor to draw up an agreement for the land lease to BAI Consultants.
What's the wish of council?
I have a question.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Hey, and Tony, and the agreement here, I saw that they were willing to use, if so they didn't use some of the land, that they were willing to allow the city to lease that back to a farmer. How does that process work? Since we already did the bidding and everything.
That's why we'll be working with our solicitor to come up with that kind of agreement.
So we'll see that then when you're completed with that then.
Any other questions, Bill? Do I have a motion?
I would move approval of the agreement.
And I will second.
Okay, we have a motion floor and a second. Any further questions or comments?
Yeah, I have some comments. Look, I know this is good for the city if this works out. I know that, and I'm in favor of solar power and development of solar of land for solar. But frankly, folks, and this land is not designated as recreational property. But the periphery of this land has been used for years by residents of the county and others as area that they could hike on and that they could walk through and that they can and I'm just, you know, I'm thinking about if BAI gets approval, I'm thinking about the amount of and I understand that at the end it still has to be maintained in good condition, but I'm thinking about the amount of equipment that's going to be in and out of there, heavy equipment to do the development of the fields. This does not seem like good use of this particular property to me, so I will be voting in opposition to this contract. Thank you.
Any comment, question?
Can Tony address some of
Call for
those
vote.
some of those concerns? Do we know how they're gonna access, how they're gonna haul stuff in and out? I mean, is that something that's been discussed, or is that something that'll be part of the lease agreement?
That's in their proposal is to come up with a plan. They have to do their studies first to even make sure it's even feasible for them. If you read in there, they're looking at a 2-year, I think it's a 2-year minimum for them to evaluate and figure out what they can actually do with the land. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out for them. But they're going to have to get our approval and conservation approval. They'll have to get all the state's approvals to do any type of work up there.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I'm confused. So if it's a 2-year process, they're just renting it for 2 years or leasing it for 2 years right now just to do the study. And they don't even know if they can use it.
Correct. Initially, that's their initial proposal is to rent it for 2 years to see if it is feasible for them to engage in some kind of long-term development there.
Any other questions? Okay, if I'm not mistaken, because this has gone on a little longer than I'm used to, we do have a motion and a second on awarding the lease agreements and having the city solicitor draw it up. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
No.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Mincer.
No.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Any other unfinished business, Greg?
I had none.
While we're talking about Rosecrans and so on, we've gotten a lot of snow and water. Where are we at with our levels now?
We are now 7 feet low. We were 13.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a
Yeah, it
nice
came
jump, but still not enough. So we need to continue our conservation efforts, I guess.
drought wise, we are still recommending that households and businesses recommending that they reduce water usage by 25%. We've been in a 10% reduction since October and really didn't see much reduction. So we are now at 25% recommendation. That is not mandatory yet. And that's predominantly because the reservoir did come up in level. For the hundreds, if not thousands of tons of snow that we removed from downtown Lock Haven, I do wish that we could have hauled all of that up to a field adjoining the old reservoir so that it could eventually melt and go into the reservoir. But that is, of course, is not cost effective. But and also when 80 was closed, that would have been impossible. But that certainly would help us out if we had some kind of conveyor belt that went from the city all the way up to Loganton that we could just load snow on.
That's not in the capital budget.
That would eliminate droughts in the future. So,
Okay, thanks for the update. New business. 8A, permission to solicit for bids for paving for portions of 4th and Spring Streets.
I'll turn this over to the Director of Public Works with the caveat that basically keeping to the same timetable will be the bids for East Water Street. And so I'll let Tony speak a little bit about what this project entails.
All right, this request is for approval to advertise the paving of Spring and West 4th Street. This project will include milling, paving, trench restoration, and replacement of ADA curb ramps. The extent of the project is Spring Street from the old hotel entrance to 4th Street and 4th Street from Fairview to the railroad tracks.
Are you going to link it up with the other paving contracts, or is this?
This would be bid simultaneously with Water Street, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll be coming back asking for water bids, Water Street bids.
Correct, but those are CDBG. And so they just get handled a little differently, but they will all be bid together along with the patching that needs to be done for water and sewer and stormwater in order to capitalize on the best price that we can get.
Also, Tony, in your narrative, the last sentence, the last word of the paragraph, it's Fairview Street, not Fairview Avenue.
Thanks,
In
Steve.
case you put it out to bid like that, you want the right street.
Anything else? Okay. So do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay.
I have a motion floor in a second. Further questions or comments? Call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Byerly,
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri,
Yes.
Councilmember Mincer,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Before we move off that, from Tony, you said about doing Water Street. Where is paving going to happen for Water Street?
Water is from J to the city line
City
down by Clark's Barn Road or Clarkstown Road there.
So heading east.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 8B, consideration of the resignation of Joseph Sanders IV as relief driver and appointing him as a fire auxiliary driver.
Joseph Sanders IV has been one of our relief drivers at Citizens Host. Because of scheduling difficulties, he needs to resign from that. And so we're asking council to accept his resignation, but at the same time, appoint him as an auxiliary driver for the city of Lock Haven. And that vacant position is already being advertised so that we can get some candidates for consideration by the Fire Auxiliary Board.
Okay, do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll move the resignation and appointment, resignation as fire relief driver and appointment as fire auxiliary driver for Joseph Sanders IV.
Okay,
Second.
I have a motion on the floor and 2 seconds. Any other questions, comments? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly,
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri,
Yes.
Councilmember Mincer,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
yes,
Councilmember Stevenson,
yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Any other new business?
I've none, Your Honor.
Any other matters to bring before council? Bill?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the city public works crews through the last 2 snowstorms that we had and all the hard work you guys did. I did have one question that was brought to me by a citizen in regards to that. Do you guys do after action plans or discussions after these kinds of events, Tony, to address those things? Any concerns or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have like I forget what Kyle calls it. He does it with his boy for Little League after the after game speech. But we do sit down and go over what they saw out there because every storm's different. Like this
Right.
was a wet storm. The 23 inches of snow, that was a dry storm. So it was kind of the snow moves different. So they have to talk between shift change and everything too, because the lighter snow, they can move a little bit faster. And the heavier snow, like last night, they got to go a little bit slower because they'll throw that slop right on your guys' yards. So we do talk amongst ourselves, and we definitely talk afterwards just to see how we can improve.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I know that today, like Tony and his crew did go over some of the suggestions that people sent. I'm being nice saying suggestions, but the suggestions that people send in on how things could be done better. They did take time to go over those today, and obviously some things are able to be addressed, some things are not, but just so the public understands, they do look at written statements that we get, voicemails that we get, and go over those and see what, if anything, can be addressed in future storms.
Perfect. Thank you. I had one more thing just to note to let people know about an event. The county's putting on a life skills event for teenagers. There's 2 of them. January 12th from 6:30 to 7:30. There's a college and financial aid seminar, life skills program. It's free to anybody in the county. And then January 26th from again 6:30 to 7:30. There's a personal finance one, and I can forward that flyer to Greg or Casey, and we can post that information if you want to, or not, if you want to, or post a link to it. But it's free registration. You just are required to pre-register, and it's a good program, free to residents of the county.
Good.
And the city, obviously.
Anything else? Does anyone else have anything for council?
I just wanted to give a shout out to, well, this past New Year's Eve, I had a little mishap, is an understatement. And so I ended up in the emergency room, but Lock Haven EMS was out on a call transferring patients between hospitals. And so 2 gentlemen from Goodwill Hose, Langillen and Tim Bartlett, were good enough to come and take me to Lock Haven Hospital, which was very kind of them. And so I wanted to give a shout out to the 2 of them. They really were great. And you can certainly see how at Lock Haven Hospital, nurses are really stretched thin, and all staff is. And, you know, here's a holiday that they'd like to be off and spending a quiet evening, but there are very few of them and a lot of people in the hospital. So I appreciate the hard work they did and the patience that they showed to me. Good hospital, good people, good community to be from.
Anything else from anyone?
Glad you're okay. There goes our insurance rate.
Right?
They'll take care of you even if you want to plant your head in your planter.
That's right.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Thank you, Richard. We're adjourned.